Hi, a very warm welcome to everyone joining us for another edition of webinar being done in a series of webinars by OP Jindal Global University, Delhi NCR, India. We are a leading social science research-based liberal arts institution located in Sonipat, Haryana, which is about 90 minutes from Delhi International Airport. This is your host for today, Ankur Vohra, the head of outreach and international admissions at the university. As you are aware, we have been doing this series of webinars over the last 4 to 5 months, where we have been bringing in top-ranking international educators, national educators from across the world to talk about relevant topics in the times that we live in. We have been doing a lot of talk around COVID, but also we have been talking about the newly launched national education policy in our country. We did a couple of webinars in the past. Today is another webinar focused on the National Education Policy 2020. We will be talking specifically about a topic which is very close to my heart, having been traveling abroad and handling the internationalization portfolio at OP Jindal Global University, is the effect of national education policy for our institutions, internationalizations, and the much talked about entry of foreign institutions in India. I know for a fact that, having been working in international markets, that there was a long pending demands from a lot of sections in our country that we should be allowing more international universities to come up and set up campuses in the country. At least the national education policy talks about that. Is it enough, or is it enough for institutions abroad, top-ranking institutions abroad, to come and set up campuses in India? This is the topic that we'll be talking about in the next 90 minutes. The room order is quite similar to what we have been following in the past. Each panelist will have about 10 minutes each to present their views on the topic at hand, post which we will have a Q&A at the end, which is 30 minutes. I will be moderating those Q&A to the relevant speakers in those 30 minutes. If there is a general question, then I'll open the floor up, and we will leave it to the panel to choose a speaker that can share their views about it. Well, we have a very distinguished panel here today with us. I'm very proud that we could have such experienced and stalwarts in the field of international education with us today. I will be introducing them during the course of the webinar, but I just want to say a sincere gratitude to all of them for joining us today, for accepting our invitation and joining us from across the world. We have people joining in from London, US, and Delhi, India, right here. So thank you so much for adjusting with the time zones. I know it's quite early for our friends in the US to be coming in, but appreciate your gesture and appreciate your support to us at OP Jindal Global University to make this initiative possible. So I'll like to share my screen now. I have a couple of slides that I would like to show to set the context here. Give me a second. I hope you can see my screen now. Thank you. Yes, so higher ed internationalization and entry of foreign institutions in India post NEP 2020, which is the national education policy, which was released in the end week of July 2020. So national education policy has been welcomed majorly in all quarters in our country. After 34 years, the country has a new education policy. You can debate its pros and cons, but majorly in our discussions that we have been doing with educators in the country and abroad, it has been welcomed. The new education policy also has far-reaching implications for school education, higher education, and the vocational learning in the country. Another aspect that we want to talk about today is the internationalization aspect of the policy. The new national education policy proposes to open the door for foreign universities to set up campuses in India, and also top Indian institutions to set up campuses abroad. So this is a two-way street. They are also encouraging our top institutions such as IITs and IIMs to go abroad and set up campuses. I know for a fact that a lot of our top institutions had expressed interest in setting up campuses abroad, but but due to government regulations were not able to do it. I know for a fact that many private institutions from India have campuses abroad, especially in Dubai. I know a lot of our universities such as SVJ and BITS, IMT and others, even MET has a campus in Dubai. So now what the government has said is that even the public institutions can go abroad and set up campuses. We have the top 100 universities that are being invited to set up campuses in the country will be facilitated to operate in India. A legislative framework will be put in place facilitating their entry, and those universities will be given special exemptions regarding regulatory governance and content norms on par with other institutions of India. So this is what the document, the National Education Policy proposes as of now, and I think it stops here, and there are no details on how this will work. So we have to wait for the legislative framework to come in. The demand for the international education in the country is phenomenal. India has the third largest higher education system in the world after US and China, with over 900 plus universities and 40,000 plus colleges. In 2019 alone, more than 750,000 students went overseas for their higher education. So that's a phenomenal number of students going abroad only for higher education every year from India. Our current gross enrollment ratio is 26.3%, and the NEP puts that target of 50% GER by 2035. So if we are to have a 50% gross enrollment ratio, there has to be an immense increase in the number of institutions that can offer higher education to students in our country, and that is where probably these international campuses can come into play. Internationalization in the past in our country has few standard objectives, and this is the way that we have been following internationalization aspect in the country till now. We have the standard faculty mobility programs. We also have the student mobility programs where the students can go abroad for a semester exchange or double degree programs. We also have collaborative programs with quite a few universities, including O.P. Jindal Global University, where we have double degree programs with some of the top institutions in the world like Cornell, Harvard, Stanford, and many other Ivy League institutions in the West. And we also have collaborative research opportunities wherein faculty and PhD scholars can collaborate with their peers in different institutions around the world. So these are the standard internationalization models that have been followed. The government of India has been doing a lot in regards to internationalization initiatives, and some of those are mentioned here. In 2015, the Ministry of Human Resource Development implemented the Global Initiative of Academic Network, GIA, to enable the country's higher education institutions to invite world-class scholars, scientists, and researchers. We have more than 1,500 courses that have been completed in Indian higher education institutions in collaboration with international faculty members. In 2018, the Scheme for Promotion of Academic and Research, SPARK, which was launched to promote joint research and collaborations with top 500 QS ranking institutions. And in 2018 was also the year when we launched the Study in India program, wherein the government of India identified 42 countries from around the world where meritorious students would be drawn to study in top 100 institutions by national institution ranking frameworks to come and study. I know for a fact, as O.P. Jindal is a partner in Study in India program, that we have also offering generous scholarships to foreign students to come and study in India, and that's quite a good target of number of students to come and study in India for the country through the Study in India program. So the government has already, even before NEP 2020, was talking about internationalization, was talking about our institutions breaking into global 500 rankings and working towards that. So NEP 2020, I hope, will give it a further push to the concept of internationalization and our institutions. Having top quality international institutions, I think this is a welcome move from me personally. Having top quality international institutions will help us in satisfying the demands of our young demographic. The GER target, as I said, that we have set for ourselves by 2025, having 50% GER, requires top quality institutions to come and set up shop in a country, because we know for a fact that we have some fantastic institutions, but some of our private institutions are not far with global institutions, and probably having those kind of collaborations, having those campuses here in the country will help us in achieving our target of 50% GER. Again, opening up the education sector is a well-needed reform, given the aspirations that we have for becoming a leading global economy, having opened up much of our economy to international investment, international collaboration. I believe education sector should also be allowed to collaborate with leading institutions abroad. We have different models around the world, and some of the countries that have been successfully running international campuses have been mentioned here. As I mentioned, Dubai has a lot of international universities, and we also have one of the leading professionals from Dubai who will be talking about American University in Dubai, Raj Kapoor. But Doha has attracted a lot of very good international campuses. Abu Dhabi has a lot of very good international campuses. Shanghai has, Malaysia has, and Singapore, as it is, has those international campuses. So what can we learn from these institutions is another topic that I'm very interested in, and I'm very happy that we have one of our colleagues who will be talking about that. We also need an enabling environment. Yes, the policy has been and it is a welcome move in the right direction. But how do we create now the environment for international institutions or global institutions to come up and set up campuses in India? What are their expectations? How are they evaluating this policy change? The final and the billion-dollar question, I think, is, will they come? Now, these are the questions that I will like to stop and end my initial comments with. I will now like to go over to my panel and open the floor to my first speaker. May I invite Professor Kaushik Dutta to present his views on the topic at hand. Before I invite Professor Dutta, I would like to formally introduce him. Professor Dutta is a Muma professor and director at the School of Information Systems and Management at Muma College of Business, University of South Florida. Previously, he was the chair, associate chair of the department, and also the academic director for MS in Business Analytics and Information Systems, and weekend executive MS in Business Analytics. He has over 22 years of professional and research experience in the field of enterprise, IT infrastructure, data analytics, and big data systems. His current research interest is data analytics in the area of mobile advertisement and healthcare. Before joining University of South Florida, Professor Dutta was a tenured associate professor at the National University of Singapore and Florida International University. Before starting his academic path, he pursued a career in engineering, most recently as the Chief Technology Officer and Vice President of Engineering of Mobilewala, an NUS incubated and Madrona funded company that developed big data based mobile advertisements platforms. Professor Dutta, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us today. Please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Ankur. If you don't mind to share the PowerPoint that I shared with you.
Yes, I'm doing it right away.
So just to start with the introduction part, right now I'm the director in the School of Information Systems and Management in the Muma College of Business in University of South Florida. If you can go to the next slide, Ankur. I just want to talk about briefly about how the USF we think as a global university. We are in the top 15 in terms of the number of patent applications across the world. We are the top 50 public university in USA in many of the different rankings. Our online programs is ranked within top 30 in the world. Our MS in Business Analytics program is ranked number 147 across the whole world. From the perspective of India, we get about students from 145 different countries in the Tampa campus, and we have 936 students right now from India. So India is definitely a big market, or big Indian students have a huge interest on our universities. Ankur, if you can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the global activities, we focus on both the research and the teaching. In terms of the research, the USF is the largest recipient of the Fulbright Scholarship and the Fellowship, both for the faculty members and the students. Our faculty members has very close collaboration research collaboration with a lot of top institutes in India. I myself has PhD students and supervising PhD students out of IIT Mumbai, IIT Chennai, XIM Bhubaneswar, and so on. But those are mostly in terms of the US universities, the research collaboration is mostly done at the level of the faculty. It doesn't require a formal collaboration between the two institutes and so on. So that's why there is a strong tie-up of the US universities, of the USF and the Indian universities in terms of the research. Say, for example, one of our faculty actually implemented a waterless toilet in Kerala. Many of the other research is also carried out in the context of India by our faculties. And many of these faculties are not actually from India. Many of these faculties, like say, for example, the water project that I talked about was actually carried out by a faculty from China, originally from China, right now a US citizen and working for USF. So it's really truly international view or international way of working. Faculty originally from another country, working in USF, right now the US citizen, working in another country like India. Is a very true global way of thinking. Now, with the focus of this particular discussion, on the teaching side, we have been running the online programs, and in the online programs, we constantly get students across the world, and we have MBA, Information Systems, Analytics, Engineering, Cybersecurity online programs where we get students, a lot of students, even right now, from India, China, Philippines, Dubai, Middle East, then East European countries, Latin America, a lot of students from all those countries join in these online programs. In addition to that, we also run programs, offshore programs, that is where we have site, actual physical site in Lima, Peru, in Casablanca, Morocco, and in Florence, Italy. Ankur, if you can go to the next slide, please. So let's focus on the USF with the context of India. In Tampa, we have a MS in Analytics program and MS in Engineering, IT, Computer Science, Industrial Engineering, where we get a lot of Indian applicants, students from a lot of engineering colleges, students with the experience in India apply to come to USF in Tampa campus and study. And this is a very standard way of studying in USF for Indian students that the Indian students have been following. For the future, what you're looking for is obviously going for the virtual campus in India, because that is most cost effective. Virtual campus means we don't need to physically go there, but probably we can run programs on a virtual basis for the students out of India. So the students don't need to move out here, because the technology right now allows us to do that. Say, for example, since March, we have been running a lot of classes in this mode, where the students we don't know where the students are. Many of the students have gone back to their home country, and even then they're continuing their PhD program, master's program, undergraduate program from their home country. And we have been doing this without any interruptions, without any degradation of the quality. And many of the faculty members right now is thinking that this is a platform that is giving them the kind of flexibility of the delivery that would not have been possible in the traditional classroom setting. Even in the traditional classroom setting right now, whenever we deliver the lecture, all those lectures are streamed online, and the students can attend class from anywhere in this world during the class, when the class is being offered in Tampa. And students can actually ask questions, faculty can answer questions, and even in some cases, the faculty can go into the computer of the students and work with the students in a collaborative way to fix their systems or fix on the programming and those kind of things. And these are some of the things that is normally not possible even in the face-to-face class. So, and we are also looking around, particularly in the context of the new education policy, the on-site programs. And in the on-site programs, our focus is partnering with the local institutes. And one of the reasons why we want to partner with the local institutes, because of the advantage of getting the local knowledge, facilities, and the market access that the local institutes right now in India has. And along with that, if we bring the USF's global identity, the access to the USF resources, then with the cost sharing model, these can be very successful programs. And I want to talk about a little bit about the access to the USF resource. Many of the resources, I will say 90% of the resources right now the students use out of the USF is 100% online. Our library is completely 100% online. I've never visited the library for the last 10 years, not just in USF, in NUS or in my other universities. All our laboratory works, like the computer labs, are being moved into the online. So we are getting away from the physical lab and we are moving the labs into the Azure AWS cloud systems so that students from anywhere in the world can access those labs. So with these facilities, there's absolutely no requirement for the student to physically be in the campus to access the resources. And that is the policy, or that is the methodology we are taking to take the USF into the global, to play a major global role. Ankur, if you can go to the next slide. So let's focus on a little bit on the on-site programs in India. In terms of the on-site programs, we are interested to, or we're working on the direction of the graduate feeder program, because India has done tremendously well in terms of the bachelor programs. There are a lot of good bachelor programs and students are doing really well. But if you look at the successful Indians in the global place, you will see many of them or most of them have done some graduate program out of India. Say, for example, if you talk about the Satya Nadella, if you talk about Google CEO Sundar Pichai, if you talk about Indra Modi out of the Pepsi, you will see all of them has a undergraduate degree in India, but a graduate degree out of India. So I believe that there is a possibility of collaborating on the graduate level where we can bring our know-how, our expertise of running the very high quality graduate programs to create entrepreneurial mindset, open mindset that is required for the graduate students. And that can be a combination of the graduate feeder program, a bachelor program in an Indian institute, and a one-year master's program in USF. And this one-year master's program can right now be allowed as per the UGC curriculum because of the hopefully because of the NETP, this new education policy. Then, of course, the dual degree program. In the dual degree program, we are looking at the one program, but 2 degrees. 1 degree from the Indian Institute and 1 degree from the USF. And the program can be taught by 50-50 by the USF and the local institutes. And the classes to be offered in virtual and face-to-face class basis. This is one thing that we want to bring into the table. And this is one thing we want the Indian Institute to take the advantage of. That is we can run the classes simultaneously on the face-to-face or in the virtual way, either in Tampa or anywhere in the world. And in that way, we are bringing the students across the globe into the classroom, and they are giving the feeling of the global citizenship. And this aspect of creating the global citizen mindset to the students is very important for the future students and the future employees. If we can go to the next one, Ankur. Now, having talked about that, let's talk about the challenges. What are the challenges we see in terms of running the India program? Obviously, the local regulations, even after this new policy, these regulations are still exist. We do not know how much of the regulations will be taken away and how much of the flexibility will be given to the international institutes. Say, for example, if we set up a tax resident density, then we have to pay the 40% tax. So we have to come up with an innovative financial model to run these institutes. If we just take out all the tuition money, then if we pay the 40% tax, then it will be prohibitively expensive for the students. And then, of course, the new 2% online education fee that has been imposed, and that is all by this new education policy. And in that also, there is quite a bit of confusion in terms of how this will be paid, where this will be paid, and who will pay this one. Because at the end, if we run the online education institutes, these are being run by the USF, and USF doesn't have any entity in India. So how the USF USA can pay a tax in USF India. So how that mechanism will work, those are very unclear at this moment. And of course, there is a lot of logistics overhead in terms of the setting up the local offices. And there is a quite a bit of Indian market. We have to understand it's very price sensitive. So the approach that we're trying to take is either the virtual classroom or hybrid delivery mode, so that the students can reduce the cost. We can reduce the cost, and we can also reduce the overhead for the students to come to the campus, because of course the transportation is a big problem in any of the large cities in India. So with the virtual classroom and the hybrid delivery mode, we can reduce the burden of the students to physically come to the classroom, and we can save the time in that perspective. If we can go to the next slide, please. So in the context of the NEP 2020, it allows the independent campus setup. Now that is, I have to be very honest, that is not the focus of the USF, and we don't want to do that in near future. The very reason is it is very much high cost prohibitive. Having a completely independent USF campus in Hyderabad or somewhere else. I know that Georgia Tech tried that a couple of years back in Hyderabad. Even tried to recruit the faculty, they did not succeed that much. So I'm a little bit skeptical of just saying a statement that, okay, International Institute can come and set up the campus. Is it enough to allow us to set up the campus? We felt, no, it is not enough. There are more things are needed, and those more things are still unclear. So right now, our focus is, obviously, we want to take the advantage of what is being given to us. So our focus is collaborative way in working with a partnership with the local institutes. So that is the only way we feel that we can come to India and offer our global education to the Indian students. And the contextual value of the local institutes will be they will play a bigger role in this particular scenario. Because even if I bring a faculty from USA and bring the faculty to teach in the India in that context, then the problem will be the context will be different. The faculty has been teaching in the context of the USA organization, how the capitalist economy is being run, whereas the Indian economy is being run in a different way. This is a different political mindset and different geographical constraint exist. So those constraints and etc. This faculty may not have the complete knowledge. So I think that collaboration is very, very important. So we are stressing on the collaboration with the local institute. Thank you.
Hi, I'm back. Sorry, I had some network issues, but I hope you can hear me now. Hi, Professor Datta, so I hope you have concluded. You want to?
Yes, I believe that we went to the thank you slide. So as I said, my main conclusion is that we are not in the mode of, we are not thinking of creating a campus, like a physical standalone campus for USF anytime in near future, because of the quite a bit of uncertainty and the regulation requirement that is still exist. And we do not know when those will be taken away and how much will be taken away. With that, we want to take the advantage of the local universities in terms of the partnering with the local institutes and creating new programs, innovative programs, and bringing a wide offering for the students in India. That is the policy we're going by.
Thank you, Professor Datta. Thank you so much for that insightful presentation. I will now move on to Anubhooti. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Hi. Yes, Ankur, can you hear me?
Perfect. So Anubhooti has been facing some technical issues. So Anubhooti will not be able to use the camera. So Anubhooti, I'll request you to use the speaker, and we can hear you loud and clear. So we'll hear your views over the voice. So I just like to, before you do that, I like to introduce you formally. And also that the audience, any questions for Professor Dutta, please put it in the chat box. I can see there are already a couple of questions there, but if anybody has any questions in the mind, please write it in the chat box, and I'll be taking it at the end, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, and that goes for every speaker. Any questions, just jot it down and I'll definitely take it up at the end. So coming to our next speaker, Anubhooti Arora, she is working as the higher education policy specialist at the US Embassy in New Delhi. She is a senior team member of the team. She supports the public affairs section efforts in strengthening the bilateral partnership and advises the section's leadership on all aspects of relationship, including the nuances of the Indian higher education system and government machinery that supports it. She coordinates the embassy's $2 million research partnerships grant to support existing US-India research collaboration in 10 areas of strategic importance. Prior to joining the embassy, she was an Education USA advisor working for the State Department's Education USA program. As an advisor, she guided hundreds of Indian students aspiring to seek an education in the United States for over 6 years. She represented Education USA at many prestigious conferences like NAPSA, NAGAP, International ACAC, and has also visited several US universities. Anubhooti is a graduate of the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, India. Thank you, Anubhooti, for joining us. Please go ahead and share your views.
Thank you so much, Ankur, and it's great to be here. If at any point you cannot hear me, please do let me know, and I will do my best to be audible. Be here with such an eminent panel and such erudite co-panelists. I hope I can do justice. So since the notification of the new education policy on July 29th, 2020, there has been a lot of discussion in India around the policy, and it's generally been hailed as a very progressive document, one which has the potential to transform Indian higher education and help the next generation of students get ready for the challenges of a workplace we don't know how its contours will be. I've said on many platforms and on a similar webinar hosted by Ankur earlier that the new education policy, in my view, in many ways Americanizes Indian higher education. And in doing so, it makes it very amenable to collaborations of different kinds, whether it's research collaborations, academic collaborations. So I think that's a really, that to me is an opportunity embedded for internationalization in the new education policy. And some of the structural changes that I feel are particularly relevant for promoting collaborations with US and other foreign universities, especially US, are as follows. The 4-year undergraduate degree. Traditionally, India has had a 3-year undergraduate degree, except in the cases of engineering and others professional programs. The fact that now students from all disciplines will be able to take a 4-year degree with multiple exit options is going to open up opportunities for academic and programmatic collaborations. So the 2+2, for example, the 3+1 program is going to be definitely possible with the 4-year undergraduate degree. In the past, Indian students have faced a lot of challenges when it comes to mobility because not all 3-year degrees are recognized as the equivalent to a US undergraduate degree. So I think the idea of a 4-year degree, a comprehensive degree, is great. The idea that you could do a 1-year master or a 2-year master is also very flexible. And I think doing away with the MPhil is actually a good idea. The emphasis on multidisciplinary, the second salient point of the policy. The emphasis on multidisciplinarity is welcome because, as we all know, one of the problems with the higher education system as it is right now is teaching in silos and learning in silos. And we all know that today's problems, global problems, local problems can no longer be addressed and solved merely by a unilateral approach. We know that whether it's climate change, the pandemic, or a host of other challenges that the world faces today need a multidisciplinary team to address them. So I think the fact that Indian education system and the NEP it is talking about multidisciplinarity is an opportunity again. It's an opportunity because it's going to breed, it's going to nurture the next generation of scholars, faculty who will think in a hopefully multidisciplinary way. And again, that's going to help forge collaborations with some of the finest universities in the United States and across the world. So I think that is an opportunity that is very much on point. Thirdly, developing a culture of research. Founding of the proposal to found the National Research Foundation, I think is also another very welcome move, because very often we've seen the kind of Indian education system, Indian institutions not really focusing a lot on research. I mean, research is happening. It's isolated. It's happening in research centers and institutions that are specifically catering to only research. So this kind of divorcing research from teaching, I felt was problematic. We all felt was problematic. And this proposal to develop a culture of research innovation in Indian universities is also very welcome. And will foster more collaborations with foreign institutions. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about the liberal arts aspect, but again, promotion of the liberal arts and creation of liberal arts universities, it's going to be complicated, but that proposal is definitely a step in the right direction. Finally, one of the biggest structural changes it proposes, the new education policy proposes, opening up of foreign university campuses, top 100 foreign university campuses in India. Now, I think this offers opportunities, but there are severe challenges also related to it. So how do we, first and foremost, the policy does not offer clarity on who are the top 100 institutions. Now, there are so many ranking frameworks around the world. There is the QS, there's the Times Higher Education. Which one do you go by? I mean, and we know that rankings in themselves are very problematic. Rankings have a problematic approach. Not all aspects related to rankings are relevant when you are seeking to establish collaborations, academic or research, with other institutions. An institution may be ranked very high, but a particular department within the larger institution may not be. And the converse may also be true. That a specific school may be very well known for its math department, but overall may not have such a high ranking. So I think the whole idea of basing everything on the top 100 institutions, as seen in some of the leading rankings framework, is a challenge that legislators and policymakers need to tackle better. The other problem that I see, the other idea of a campus. I mean, the idea of a campus needs to be unpacked. What do we mean by a campus? The traditional definition of campus, as I see, the NEP proposing, is a large university that's spread over acres of land, has multiple schools and departments. However, what I would propose, the legislative structure. So there are a lot of US universities and other foreign universities that have campuses in India. Now, these campuses are lean campuses. You could also call them centers. And these campuses foster academic exchange. They are a space for scholars of the home campus to come and integrate and interact with universities in India, with like-minded professors and faculty members in India. They are also a ground for forging corporate partnerships. Look at the University of Chicago campus in Delhi, for example. It's an urban campus, it's a lean campus, but may not be traditionally seen as a full-fledged university campus. But it's doing some tremendous work. So I think the Indian legislators would do well by broadening their understanding on what a campus could be. And I would favor certainly the establishment of lean campuses, which may not traditionally fit into our definition of what a conventional campus is. I'd also like to give the example of the Indian Institute of Bombay and Monash University's Research Academy. Now, IIT Bombay and Monash have set up a small center in Mumbai, at the IIT campus in Bombay, which offers PhDs at large scale. Now, these PhDs tackle some of the most pressing challenges that we face as humanity. They're working on issues such as targeted delivery of drugs, They're looking at clean energy and some very strategic areas. Now, I mean, according to the NEP's definition, it does not fit into what a conventional campus is, but it is nevertheless performing a very important role of working on some global challenges, and also in the process enhancing Indian higher education with a global expertise, with a different perspective that this particular university and its professors bring on board. So I think the government of India would do well by expanding its definition of campuses, or the converse of sort of seeing the importance of a lean campus or a lean center, and its potential to improve India's socioeconomic development. Setting up, Professor Dutta talked about, the fact that setting up a campus may not be something that USF may want to do. I think a lot of universities may think similarly, because setting up campuses require enormous finances and investment. And in the current pandemic situation, when university budgets are under stress, that may not be something that a lot of universities would jump at. But I would definitely think that it's a welcome move. I'm glad that the Indian government has looked at only the best universities in the world, because that's going to assure quality, and it's going to safeguard the interest of Indian students by not inviting only profit-oriented universities. So I think that's a welcome move, but the government of India may, and the legislators who are actually developing this framework, may do well by holding and hosting a multi-stakeholder discussion with representatives of different countries and universities and leadership of different countries to really come together and give suggestions on how opening a campus and what kind of a campus would be feasible, would be in the interest of India and both the university, a foreign university. So I think I would particularly say that that format of a lean campus in a center may be more amenable, and that may lead to eventually opening up of campuses many years down the line. And I would just end at that, and I would finally just say that these foreign collaborations, whether it's through opening a campus, which is very unlikely in many cases, in the case of many universities, opening up centers of research, centers of excellence, in collaboration with Indian universities, may be really the step forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anubhooti. Really nice points made, and we missed your lovely picture, but you had some good content. Thank you so much for making the efforts. I know you have been trying for quite some time to work out these technical issues, but as is the case with technology. So thank you so much, and keep those questions coming for Anubhooti. She has made some really good points that we can also talk upon in the Q&A section. So I quickly moving on to my next distinguished speaker, Mr. Raj Kapoor, the Director of Student Recruitment from American University in Dubai. I would like to do a formal introduction for Raj. Raj came to Middle East from the UK in 1999. His various roles at the AUD include Director of Human Resources and Assistant Dean and Associate Professor of the School of Business Administration. He assumed the role of Director of Student Recruitment in January 2019. Over the course of his career, he has participated as a speaker at various local and international seminars and conventions. He has delivered presentations and managed workshops for businesses, firms, and universities on topics ranging from student recruitment, leadership, talent acquisition, motivational techniques, and how to do business in the UAE. Thank you so much, Mr. Raj, for joining us. I'll share your presentation and you can start speaking.
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And just while you're putting the slides up, Ankur, these things just don't happen. So I think we need to just pause and applaud you and your whole team at OP Jindal for putting this together. You said it's an honor and privilege, to host us, but I can tell you from each one of us, it's an honor and a privilege for us to be here today. And for me specifically, thank you so much for thinking of me. And I'm really looking forward to this. And it's been wonderful listening to two of our distinguished panel already, and I'm looking forward to listening to two more as well. So as Ankur mentioned, I have the honor and the privilege of being known as AUD's Director of Student Recruitment, the American University in Dubai's Director of Student Recruitment. What I plan to do in the next eight to 9 minutes is firstly start by saying, look, you know, comparisons are odious. My job here today is not to say that, look, whatever I'm going to discuss here and what worked for the UAE or Dubai and the UAE is going to work in India, but these are the things that I can share our experiences and say, look, without these critical things, this campus would not have been as successful as it is today. And that's what I'll do. But just listening to Professor Dutta and sorry, I've forgotten your name, but you know, the panelists just before me, you know, so many things are just so common. So Ankur, if you can please go to the first slide. You know, firstly, if we're going to attract IVCs, they really have to
sorry,
be.
I just want to add in here. There is a disturbance coming. Is it coming for everyone? I don't know if that's the case for me. There is a disturbance coming from your end, so it is. Yeah. There's this nagging sound that comes just like a microphone. You know, it's so if you can just double check your headphones or something, or we can come back to you. No,
sure.
There is disturbance. We can come back to you probably. You can, if you have headphones or something, or we can probably restart your machine, because there is a disturbance and that is continuously. So it will ruin the presentation that you have.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know. I will log out, log in. Were you hearing it before we went live?
No, it just started now when you started speaking.
Okay. Maybe if Miss Arora could just switch off her camera, would that make a difference? I don't know, because that's the only thing that's changed. Has anything better now?
No. Anubhooti has no role. She is on mute, so her camera and is of no use. Probably what I suggest is you do a restart.
Perfect.
And then come back.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Let me. So we'll just go to the next one, and I'll join you in a second.
Yes. So I will go on to Dr. Rachika now, and we'll come back to you in 10 minutes time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anubhooti, everybody is looking to you for some disturbance. Technological issues. Today is Anubhooti's day.
Not me, I can assure you that.
I really loved it when he said Anubhuti's camera is on. Probably. Man,
I think my neighbor's Wi-Fi signal is working better now. You know, my toddlers did something to my computer. Sorry about it.
No problem. So quickly moving on to our next speaker, Dr. Rachika Bhandari. Thank you so much. She is a stalwart in the field of international education. I'll do a formal introduction for her now. Please mute yourself, whoever is not speaking, because I can hear the echo. Yes, so now it's fine. Dr. Rachika Bhandari is the president and CEO of the IC3 Institute, a scholar practitioner. Dr. Bhandari previously spent over a decade at the Institute of International Education, IIE, where she led IIE's thought leadership initiatives and its global research and impact studies focused on student and scholar mobility, including the flagship Open Doors report on international education exchange. Her other roles include ones at MPR Associates, now part of RTI, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and at Teachers College, Columbia University. She is a global expert in international higher education. Dr. Bhandari is a frequent speaker and writer with several publications and 5 books to her credit. She is also a non-fiction author and has recently completed her second book on the international student experience and immigration in the US. She holds degrees from the University of Delhi in India and North Carolina State University in the US. It's an honor to have you here with us, Dr. Bhandari. Please go ahead and share your views.
Thank you so much, Ankur, and thank you for organizing this, and great to have heard Kaushik's and Anubhuti's observations as well, which were wonderful. And I think a couple of us will be saying this, that some of the ideas have already been raised. So where those ideas have already been mentioned, I'm going to simply reiterate them, because if they're really critical, then I think they're worth re-emphasizing. But my mandate from Ankur in this session was to reflect both, what the goals of internationalization in India can look like, both with the NEP, but also post-COVID-19, because we're sort of seeing these two developments coming together at almost the same point in time, two very different developments, but two major coinciding ones nonetheless. So the point that I actually want to start with is sort of looking at the status of internationalization in Indian higher education post COVID-19. Now, again, a lot of this will also relate to the NEP. But one of the aspects that I would really like to emphasize is this idea of internationalization at home, as it's known, and as the phrase has been coined. And even pre-COVID, of course, with COVID, we've seen a lot of disruptions to how many students who want to go abroad can actually go abroad, and others who are actually looking at domestic alternatives. But even pre-COVID, only 1% of Indian students study abroad. Now, when we look at that 750,000 number, that's a very large number in absolute terms. But given the size of the college-age population in India, that absolute number represents only 1% of the Indian student cohort for higher education. So the big question it raises is, what about the remaining 99%, and how are they going to become global citizens and be competitive in a global economy? So I think the concept of internationalization at home, whether it's due to increasing restrictions on travel and students being able to go out, or the broader picture that was already existing, that for a country like India, the reality is that not that many students can actually go abroad. So I think the critical piece is going to be, how do Indian institutions adopt an internationalization at home approach, which means internationalizing the curriculum, it means internationalizing the pedagogy, and really facilitating the contributions of faculty who themselves are foreign trained and foreign educated, and by better integrating in the international students that do attend Indian institutions and bring perspectives from other countries. I mainly want to emphasize faculty here. I think this is a piece that is this is a population that's a huge untapped resource, existing untapped resource in Indian universities. I remember when I was a student at Indraprasth College in Delhi University, almost all my senior faculty in the Department of Psychology had been educated in the US. But I do not recall any clear strategy towards integrating in that international mindset and exposure that they had already had into what was actually happening in the classroom. And I don't know to what extent it happens even today. So again, this idea of internationalizing at home is going to be very important, because we are too focused just on the physical mobility to really think about the majority of students here, which is, as I said, about 99% of them. My next point is around sort of thinking about the NEP and, a couple of features that facilitate greater international engagement. And both Kaushik and Anubhooti have touched on various aspects of this already. But one piece I think that has not been mentioned is that the greater autonomy for institutions that's enshrined in the new policy will enable more international exchanges and partnerships at the institutional level, many of which could also be virtual, and we're already seeing the greater shift towards online engagement because of COVID-19. So again, those two aspects are coming together at the same point in time. I think the other feature of the NEP that's really important, and Anubhuti's already talked a lot about this, is this emphasis on research. which will not only enhance the potential for India's international research and research collaboration, but will really also help retain Indian talent in the STEM fields that typically goes abroad in search of better research opportunities, and will also help attract more international students and faculty from around the world who value a serious commitment to research and innovation. So I think this focus on research is absolutely central to stronger internationalization. The third point I want to make, and both Kaushik and Anubhooti have touched upon this in different ways, is this idea of what exactly does it look like for a foreign campus to be set up in India? And I think this part of the NEP, as all of us have already observed, is very nebulous and is something that really needs to be detangled. Now, India, and I'm going to sort of make this point from a slightly different angle than what's already been made, and which is to say that India has always already had a very strong higher education sector. And what remains to be seen is that how are these 100 institutions going to fit in? It's very different where a country is building its higher education sector and its capacity from scratch, and is then relying on overseas institutions. But in the case of India, the role of post-secondary education in society is well established. And so it remains to be seen how foreign institutions will operate in partnership and collaboration with Indian institutions, or whether they're going to end up creating silos in the country, as well as unhealthy competition amongst existing very strong Indian universities and foreign institutions. Now, when we look at some of the branch campus models around the world, they've sometimes been faulted for becoming bubbles of exclusivity in countries where they're set up. So it, as has already been mentioned, it really remains to be seen. And, I think Kaushik used this phrase, the contextual value, that how do you really marry something very strong that already exists in India in a particular ethos and culture of education with foreign campuses coming in with a different, potentially a different culture. The last point I want to make is sort of the very good one that Anubhooti raised, and it's almost like we were thinking in parallel here. But the fact that we really need to look beyond rankings. Now, I think that as a culture and with sort of a mindset within India, whether it's students, universities, parents, and now we see it in the policy, we are a very, very brand conscious people. And I think that's now also reflected in this focus on sort of the 100 top ranked universities. And I think that it's a little worrying that rankings, which themselves, as Anubhooti said, are very controversial, might be allowed to drive national policy and strategy in this particular case. Rankings can be one metric, but the Indian government should also really look to universities whose mission aligns with achieving the broader goals of higher education in India. And I think that's going to be really critical. These areas of focus and mission could include, for example, access and inclusion, especially for marginalized communities, focusing on certain disciplines that are beneficial to India's ongoing socioeconomic development, and ultimately helping shape Indian students to be both globally minded citizens who can solve both local and global problems. And there are many universities around the world that share these values, and they're not necessarily in that list of the top 100. And we still don't know what that rankings, as Anubhooti said, or what specifically that list is. And I would say, to really think outside the box beyond that 100, what about even the American community college model? In fact, some years ago, under one of the previous Indian administrations, there was a strong exploration of how can the American community college be brought to India. And now, and I'll conclude with this, now with the NEP's focus, one of the other areas of focus of the NEP is the greater articulation between secondary education, careers, and vocational education. So if we look at it from that angle, the entry of the community college model in India would actually be one such model to look to. And again, that's not necessarily a model that's reflected strictly in that ranking of the top 100 institutions. So I'll conclude with that, and thank you again, Ankur, and I look forward to Lakshmi's remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Rajika. Thank you so much for that insightful remarks. I will now move on to my next speaker, Ms. Lakshmi Iyer, another stalwart of international education. She's based out of New Delhi, India. But yeah, before I formally introduce her, I would like to remind the audience, keep those questions coming. Any questions for Dr. Rajika's presentation, please write in your questions in the chat box, and we'll be taking that up in the later half of this webinar. With regards to my next distinguished speaker, Ms. Lakshmi Iyer, I would like to introduce her formally. She is the Executive Director and Head of the Education Division at Sannam S4. She has been working in the education industry for over 18 years now and brings senior managerial experience to the table. Her passion for the sector is immense, and she has been an active observer and commentator about the industry. She has been working with Sannam S4 since 2011. Prior to working with Sannam, Ms. Iyer was associated with Study Overseas Global, a leading education consultancy in India. She served in the company for 9 years, having been part of the establishment team in Mumbai and eventually relocating to New Delhi. She is a DFID scholar with a master's in international marketing from the UK. She began her career in international education, working with student support office at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. At Sannam S4, under Lakshmi's leadership, the education division now supports over 75 higher education clients from 8 countries. In the last 6 years, she has been responsible for nurturing key relationships, which has enabled the division to expand its footprint to China, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the UAE. She is a sought-after speaker at leading higher education conferences across the world, and she is an avid observer and commentator on the higher education space and runs one of the most respected personal LinkedIn and Twitter channels for news aggregation on higher education. It's an honor to have you with us, Lakshmi. Please go ahead and share your views.
Thank you so much, Ankur, for inviting me to be part of the panel. And something struck me as I was listening to the previous speakers, that our panel is quite heavily focused on the US. So I am going to be the lone voice here, talking about the other systems as well. The question that you posed to me as you built this panel together was that how are foreign institutions warming up to the opportunity provided by the NEP 2020. So, and I told you that, I would probably kind of, wind up my comments going as the last speaker, having had everybody speak about everything about the NEP, barely leaving anything for me to talk about. But I think there are some interesting aspects of the NEP that could resonate with foreign institutions, some of which have been already covered by Professor Dutta, Anu, and Dr. Bhandari. But I think from what we are seeing on the ground, institutions are certainly intrigued and they are interested in the key changes that have been kind of put forward in the 62-page document, which, for the first time, finding a document that is brief was very interesting, and that also collated some of the key issues that our sector faces in India. Was an interesting exercise, and I have to kind of congratulate the committee for bringing together so many different concepts and establishing them in this document that hopefully would help us create a roadmap for the next 20 years, because the document ends at 2040 with some of the critical changes happening between now and 2040. So the institutions are definitely interested and intrigued by this document. We have seen such a lot of discussion around the setting up of campuses, recognition of international credits, establishing the academic credit bank, which would enable students to kind of transfer credits between institutions in India, which is a leap I would say, forward. Easier facilitation of research, teaching, and faculty collaborations. This has been enshrined in the document as well. However, international institutions are also wary of the prospective timeline that has been introduced in order to kind of make some of these recommended changes into reality. Because we also have to remember that many institutions looked at the previous higher education foreign providers bill with a lot of interest, and then kind of felt that some of the provisions within that bill were quite prohibitive. Especially in terms of repatriation of profits, because in the Indian context, education is not a for-profit endeavor, and there are also complications around the fact that education remains a concurrent subject. So center and the state governments have got control over this topic. So all of that then results in complications for a foreign institution, even thinking about setting up a campus here, because they do not want to be caught in the political kind of crossfire that can happen. Education remains a highly emotive issue for a large majority of us Indians, and it can be literally like a football. Being kind of thrown around. So they have been burnt in the past by that, and so they really would like to see the legislative framework for the operationalization of campuses as and when they could happen in India. And with the HECI, which is the Higher Education Commission of India, that is now going to be set up. And the horizon for that is set to be by 2022. So the legislative framework for a campus could only happen once the HECI comes into play. So the first green shoots of potentially a campus in India could be 5 years from now. Not even kind of it's not going to happen in a matter of 2 to 3 years. It is so the first in the first 5 years probably we will see potentially one campus coming up. Nonetheless, I feel that the NEP has certainly kind of, showcased a very forward-looking policy, which completely, which looks at education holistically from, the school-going age, and there are structural changes that have been articulated in the document, going on to higher education and, beyond into research. So that way, it looks at the entire value chain of education from school to research, which is great to see. And top institutions that, so the 100 institution debate, right? On what basis was this figure of 100 kind of, incorporated in the document? And we know from, key committee members who supported the committee that, it was just as a placeholder that number was put there, because we know that India's needs are hugely diverse. They can't just be served by the top 100 institutions. We have going back to the point that Dr. Bhandari made, in India you cannot do anything without thinking about equity, access, and quality. And that cannot happen by just, inviting the top 100 institutions. There can be a community of students served by community colleges or further education colleges or private training providers from other parts of the world. There could be a group of students to be served by institutions that are, high quality, but might be 500 in the world. So the number is, I think we should look at that number as a placeholder, and a point that Anu made of, wider consultation around who we invite and how we invite them to set up something in India. I think that needs fleshing out, and that needs a wider debate. It can't be that we just invite the top 100 institutions. And Professor Dutta made that point. An institution like USF would first consider collaborations before they even think of a brick and mortar presence. And what the COVID-19 situation has shown us is that there are other models of learning, other models of teaching, and those are going to stay here even after the pandemic. And in some ways, much as it has wreaked havoc on entire humanity, there are certain positive things that have come out of COVID-19. And I do believe that one of the key things, positive elements of COVID-19 is the expansion of education that we have seen. And that is here to stay. And those models are not going to be easily forgotten. Yes, we will go back to campuses, but we will also see a wider range of students accessing education via various different models that we have now taught ourselves in a matter of 6 months that they can work and they can deliver. So, and the improvements will keep on happening incrementally, and in some cases, exponentially as a result of being catalyzed by COVID-19. And the other point that I want to also make is that international institutions will want to have a longer term ROI. Nobody is kind of going to do anything without knowing that in the longer run it is going to pay back in some way. So we need to kind of figure that model out, which would make it mutual, because there has to be mutuality. It's not about one party giving all the time and another one taking. There is no joy in that. So there has to be mutuality in that cooperation. When we are having foreign institutions operating here, we receive something, we give something. Obviously, India brings a lot of diversity, the brain power, the human capital element, all of that to the table. But there has to be a give and take. From the foreign institution perspective, there will be definitely concerns around IP and risk management to protect the brand, and and financial status and reputation of who we invite in. Definitely something that India has to bear in mind. I have 3 more points based on what my co-panelists said prior to my turn. One was, this Americanization of Indian education. Of course, India embracing the 4-year undergrad is a huge step, and that enables us to kind of, look at all forms of collaborations. And I do think that in the next 5 to 7 years, we will see a lot of action in the collaboration landscape as institutions start testing the waters. Just to see, whether, all of this is going to stick, and, the carpet is not going to be kind of, suddenly pulled from under their feet, and that, any collaboration that they form will be kind of, sustainable and will be rewarding in a lot of ways, both financially and otherwise. But there are other models. India does not need to kind of, invent models. There are great models that exist for collaborations all around the world. All we need to do is to kind of, find models that could kind of work in the Indian context. And then obviously anything in India, we have to look at our size of the population, our contextual, kind of, the setting, and we'll have to work in the Indian context. But having said that, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel. And this embracing of liberal arts, the document is the public acknowledgement of liberal arts being a holistic kind of way of teaching and learning, and it augurs well for our future generations, primarily because the problems that we face as humanity, they are complex. They cannot be kind of solved by just one country. Countries have to collaborate. In a lot of ways, liberal arts education quite opens your mind and gives you the ability to think and learn different topics without being siloed right from an early age. That okay, I'm just going to do commerce, or I'm just going to do science, and never look left, right, or center to see if there are other disciplines that I can bring into that and make it richer and multidisciplinary, so that it opens the mind of the student to solve complicated problems that we are facing as a humanity today. And I do believe that one of the key principles of the document is that it encourages collaboration, and collaboration for common good is something in the last 6 months, having lived through this pandemic and probably a few more months of tough times ahead of us, that is something that we all have now kind of embraced and accepted, that there is a lot of common good that can come out of collaboration. And I believe that, this document paves the way for India to collaborate more widely in the education space with a spectrum of institutions, not just the top 100. So I'll stop my comments there, and thank you very much, Ankur, for the opportunity to share my views.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for those remarkable remarks and presentation. Thank you so much for summing it up so well. I will like to now go back to Raj. Raj, we can see you. I hope.
Can I do a quick test? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay now.
Okay,
so
brilliant.
I just shared your presentation, and all the very best.
Thank you so much. I'm really sorry about that. I don't know what happened. So I'll just take off, carry on where I got to. Basically, I was just thanking everyone, Ankur especially, for putting this together, my co-panelists. And I think in a freaky kind of way, they say things happen for a reason. This might work out well with me going last, because a lot of what I have to say is things that you've covered already. What I hope to do in the next 8-9 minutes or so is speak a little bit about our university, the American University in Dubai, and what things really happened to make us successful. And as you can imagine, a lot of it was to do with the environment in which we're in, which specifically, let's talk about the government to start with. But ultimately, if India is going to attract IBCs, there's got to be a reason. With all due respect, there's got to be a reason for IBCs to come to India. If you look at our case, we're in the United Arab Emirates, and for many years, United Arab Emirates have had strategic plans, strategic goals. These strategic goals have I can't think of one strategic priority or goals whenever they came out that did not include education, did not include the mentioning of knowledge economies, did not include that we want a first-rate, fair judiciary kind of environment. Basically, we have an infrastructure in place for education to succeed. The government, I can't tell you, I've had the fortune of living in different countries, but I cannot tell you how much the leadership of the United Arab Emirates embraces, invites, makes people from other countries feel at home. And if you can just go to the next slide, please, Ankur. And this is, as I said, it's not just happened in the last 2 years or so. This goes back to the mid 2000s. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, he knows that it is common knowledge that it is far easier to build financial capital than it is to build intellectual, psychological, and moral capital. Building a road or a bridge may take a year or two, but developing people takes a lifetime. We live today in an era of ever-changing knowledge, which requires continuous learning and does not end at a certain level or the attainment of a diploma or certain expertise. There's been this quest of learning is lifelong. There's been this quest of, whenever you get somewhere, if you wake up the next day, it's not about what happened yesterday. You might have achieved something today, but tomorrow you get up and you run again. So learning is lifelong. Education is lifelong. You've never arrived, basically. And this is instilled by His Highness, the leadership, the very top leadership. And he wants to see this in his people. He wants to see this in the 90% of expatriates that are in the UAE or in Dubai specifically. So just wanted to set the background. If I can go to the next slide, please, Ankur. So we're talking, we're not talking a long time ago. In 1990, which is not that far away, you can visualize it. There were 4 higher education institutions in the United Arab Emirates. Today, there are 100 higher educational institutions. Okay, the UAE, this small little speck that you see in the world map is host to 33 IBCs. We're just second in the world. We're 1 behind China, which has 34. Things just don't happen, and I'll come back to that in a second. The number of inbound international students in our great nation is 78,000. A lot of you will have heard of international branch campuses being set up in a hub, a zone, something that we call Dubai International Academic City. This was launched about around the year of around 2000. And the director at the time, Dr. Ayub Kazim, who I know reasonably well, wanted this to be based on a Boston type educational system as opposed to an elitist type educational system. And this lends a lot to what my co-panelists just said earlier. You know, when we're talking about 100 top tier universities and whatnot, it doesn't cater to everybody. And the beauty of having a Boston style education system is you tick many boxes. So what was prevalent to the UAE and in our history at that time were, of course, industries such as education for sure, healthcare, finance, oil and gas, tourism. So you might not have had top 100 universities specifically offering tourism. India, I know today, there's a big niche, there's a need for railways, there's a need for new ways of mining and what have you. You might not have a top 100 university that offers those programs. That is a need for the country. So, you know, this has to be tackled in a way where it's this win-win-win situation. And that's the way it was set up. The other thing, you all know, the ecosystem of the UAE, and this was again mentioned by my co-panelists, repatriation of profits. The way we attracted these universities was that the country was very transparent in the way you do business here. We did a lot of research, and the research came back, and a lot of people said, well, you know, as we do in India, a lot of this requires partnerships, a lot of this requires co-sharing. I'm not sure universities such as ours, for example, wants to go into the UAE and then have a 51% local partner. You know, the beauty of being in a sheikhdom, and perhaps, you know, I'm not saying, I don't want to say anything about democracies and whatnot, but in a sheikhdom, it was a decision that was made. It was just like, okay, you know what, if this is a concern, let's set up the IAC in a free zone. In a free zone, it gives foreign companies 100% ownership. As well as the 100% ownership, you've got free movement of capital, which is very important for institutions here. So you can repatriate profits. There's a zero corporate tax. So this is a bit about the ecosystem. More than that, I'll let you visualize about what Dubai looked like in 1990 and what it looks like today in a second. But you know, if there was any criticism, you know, it can clearly, you can forego that criticism, because we've got NYU AD, where I happened to meet Ankur face to face not so long ago, pre-pandemic times. Their admission success rate is 3%. So out of every 100 applications they receive, they accept 3. So, you know, touch wood, we have the standards as well. So please, Ankur, if I could just go to the next slide. I spoke a little bit when you're ready, Ankur, sorry. Okay, so, you know, something I've mentioned about the leadership here is the vision. That picture on your left, as you see it, was in the early 1990s. Those of you that have been to Dubai, this was taken from one of our icon buildings at the time, the World Trade Center. That was a mere 29 years ago. The picture you see on the right is what Dubai looks like in 2019, early 2020. Literally quite, you know, not taken many miles away from where that picture in 1990 was taken. So when I talk about an ecosystem, you're talking about knowledge, the building of human capital, a knowledge economy, a competitive economy. His Highness also believes that you should have competition, because competition makes us stronger. It makes us better. It makes us innovate. It makes us create. It makes us co-create. It makes us collaborate, you know, in a nutshell. And what you've got here is an ecosystem where, if I'm going to bring these universities in, these university graduates are going to need jobs after they graduate. So I'm going to invite businesses around what our strengths are: oil and gas, tourism, finance, healthcare, and encourage these businesses to set up shop in Dubai. And then you've got the ecosystem of people coming in, pursuing their degrees in the United Arab Emirates, and then having the employability side of it as well. As I said at the beginning, comparisons are odious, but I can only talk to you about what was successful in this emirate. Please, Ankur, if I can just go to the next one. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit specifically about my wonderful university and the American University in Dubai. We are 25 years young. In fact, we just hit our 25th year in September, earlier this month, where we first opened our doors. And there's no doubt in my mind that the facilitation, the encouragement of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum has been pivotal in our success. The endorsement at the beginning, the continued support. I remember him standing at graduation and shaking the hands of 450 graduates every year, I think 13 times out of 14 in our first 14 years of graduation ceremonies. When we first opened, the country was hungering for higher education. There's no doubt about it. I mentioned that we are 90% expatriate. We had four or a handful of universities that were here at the time. Higher College of Technology, the United Arab Emirates University, Dubai Polytechnic, and so on. There was only one major private entity, the Ajman University. And honestly, that expatriate population was yearning for a university here. At that time, a lot of our students that graduated from school would go abroad. Many still do, but a lot less than that used to in the 1990s. We'd just come out of the first Gulf War, and hence AUD, I think, capitalized a little bit on the obsession for all things American. What you understand, and you beautifully said there about the liberal arts education, the whole person education. It's about not just your major. It's not just about regurgitation. It's about critical thinking. It's about problem solving. It's about analyzing. It's about working in teams. It's about collaboration and much more. One of the other key things in my mind at that time was the fact that we opened from day one with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools COC accreditation. This meant that students in the Gulf had access to an American, regionally accredited American university right here in their home yard, in the backyard. And that was the hallmark of quality, if you like, the benchmark of quality, and that's what I think was relevant in our history. Of course, today the market has moved on much more, and like in any mature market, there are different things now that give you competitive advantages, and we'll need more than 8 minutes to talk about that. But obviously, this is a moving target, and things do change as other universities have popped up. Those of you that haven't been on our campus, just going to share a couple of photos here. We're in the heart of Media City and Internet City. Just to talk to you a little bit more about, and you can go to the next one, Ankur. This is just to show our beautiful campus. It is like an everything American in the heart of Dubai, but 110 different nationalities, fully inclusive. The whole person education. QS ranking, someone has mentioned QS earlier, ranked the American University in Dubai as #1 for employability. We're #4 globally for student diversity, and we're #2 globally for faculty diversity. So you can imagine, what kind of richness this brings to the campus and our students. So, sorry again for the technical problems, but and then I know Q&A will be done at the end.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you so much. We have just about hit the finish time for our webinar, but I'll just take 10 minutes over it before the Q&A section, because there are some good questions that are there. Thank you so much, everyone, for your remarks. I appreciate it. On behalf of OP Jindal Global University, once again, many, many thanks. So I will now open the floor for questions. I can see there are a couple of questions for Professor Dutta. So one of the first questions for you is from Priya Chaudhary. She has mentioned something. She says, what is your university doing for engaging schools? Are there any school programs or school tie-ups that you do in India? Probably she's a teacher who is looking for some programs that you offer for the school students. So if you can talk about that, Professor Dutta.
Currently, in the USF context, we have very strong collaboration with the local school in the state, in the Florida state. Of course, our presence in India right now is very minimal in terms of the graduate and undergraduate program. So right now that relationship doesn't exist, but in future, when we build a partnership with one local university and start running undergraduate or graduate program, we'll definitely look forward to some collaboration with the top schools in the country, in India.
Thank you, Professor Dutta. The next question is from Manit in London. He says, with the move for more visualized classes using resources such as AWS and Azure, how have you planned to improve your cybersecurity posture to align with the current cyber threats of today? Example, data breaches. So if you could talk about your
cybersecurity has been a threat for the US universities and the US institutes forever. And even in the current political landscape of the global political landscape, this has been a constant threat. So we address that threat as usual as any other corporate world, because there are data breaches, there are constant threat in terms of the stealing the data, stealing the scientists, science that is going on behind the scene. So there is constant effort. There's nothing unusual or there's nothing extraordinary there. That was going on forever, and it will continue like any other corporate industry, corporate organizations.
Thank you, Professor Dutta. My next question is an open question. I will ask a couple of you to answer it. This is from Dhaval Gandhi. He says, what has been the experience for other countries that have allowed setting up local campuses like China, UAE? Is there has been a reduction in outward mobility of students in these countries? And has it led to intellectual capacity building in those countries? So what has been the experience in countries that have already allowed foreign campuses? Lakshmi, if you can take this up, I see your hand.
If we look at China, China went about it in a deliberate fashion, actually kind of investing in foreign university campuses. They invited them, offered them the land, the capital, and got them to set up with a view to kind of learning from those campuses to enable their capacity building. Now, in the post-pandemic world, what we will see is probably more and more Chinese students studying at home rather than kind of leaving China. And the campuses have been quite successful so far as, so long as they have adhered to some of the requirements that the Chinese government has in terms of how these campuses would operate internally. But having said that, the campuses have kind of managed to get students, attract students, a limited number of students from other countries as well to go and study in the Chinese campuses, but have largely attracted Chinese nationals to come and study in the campuses. So from a capacity building perspective, it has been a good experiment that China has had. Dr. Bhandari wants to come in.
Yeah, Dr. Bhandari, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to add to what Lakshmi is saying, one of the points that I think our panels also made is that there's no one size fits all. And when we talk about this notion of an international branch campus, each of those also looks different, or even if not each of those, then each country's approach looks different. And so even, for example, when Raj mentioned NYU Abu Dhabi, certainly it's, it may be seen as a branch campus. So my understanding is that NYU's own leadership does not claim it to be a branch campus. In fact, they often say we are not a typical branch campus. So, again, that has a lot to do with how it's set up, how it's recruiting its student and faculty, how it's engaging domestically in that country. So I think the models are really different. One point around success, which the person asked about, and this goes back to another point that I think has been made very strongly on this panel, that local context really matters. and what is really being exported in, because it's not just exporting in a degree, it's also exporting in philosophies of education, it's exporting in ideas. And around that, we have certainly seen some challenges globally with certain branch campuses where I believe even, Yale NUS has had some challenges around this, or even other campuses where, the ideas of free speech and free thinking that sort of underpin an American style education and are very appropriate and suited to an American context may not have transferred so well in the exact form into a different cultural context. So I think that's a real consideration as we think to the success of these sorts of arrangements and the importance of the local context.
Thank you, Dr. Mandari.
Sorry, that
Yeah,
was beautiful. If I
yeah,
just to add, there's also the context of why students go abroad. Everybody has a different reason. It could be it's too competitive in the home. I know you've got some fantastic campuses in India that have that 3, 4, 5% admissions rate too. So it could be that for the admissions, they couldn't get admissions where they wanted it. It could be for a program that doesn't exist. It could be for the quality of life that you're going abroad. It could be for the immigration purpose. It could be for moving abroad after the degree and so on. So these things are fundamental, for any institution to take into account. And of course, to also answer the question of that was posted, these numbers will vary, the success of institution will vary, and it will vary by geography to geography as well. As Dr. Mandari also mentioned, we've had not everything's been successful for institutions that have moved to the United Arab Emirates. Some have not adapted as well. Some felt that they could superimpose the home campus here, but you've got to adjust for what the environment around you and academic freedom and what you can say and not say. And even in an art class, you have a studio art class where traditionally you draw a model. In a nation such as ours, there's certain things you need to black out of that model or the book and so on. So you need to be ready to adapt. But yeah, great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anubhooti, will you like to come in? You want to add something here, or can I move on?
I think already some very good points have been made. I was reading the work of Dr. Philip Altbach, who's a very well-known researcher and an expert in international education. He too has pointed out to a lot of problems related to exporting of branch campuses. So the ethos element and academic integrity, academic freedom, all of those aspects, and also the kind of enabling environment that a host government is willing to do. How far are they willing to go in terms of finances and other critical aspects? I mean, all of those need to be accounted for. It's not as simple as it sounds.
Thank you, Anubhooti. Next question is for Raj from Stephen. Raj, Stephen asks, what is the kind of student profiles that AUD has, and if you're doing something with regards to diversity and inclusion at your campus?
Oh, beautiful. Love the question. So AUD has 110 different nationalities on campus. Of course, it's not just nationality that brings diversity. It's many other things, but a huge liberal arts program that therefore means that students that are taking an English class or a science class or a public speaking class, a humanity, could be pursuing a degree in engineering, could be pursuing a degree in business, could be pursuing a degree in interior design, visual communication, or architecture or psychology. And you're sitting around a table in a group from someone with a completely different country from you, has different interests. They're pursuing a business degree and you're doing engineering, and you're co-collaborating and you're sitting around a table in a classroom. Fully inclusive, events for us, events outside the classroom are really not determined, but are a huge component of your success in the classroom. So in true American style, we have a huge sports and activities calendar. activities from International Night, where, you know, we have 25, 26 different clubs where you bring your traditional dance, your traditional dishes and what have you, share it along with everyone else, speak about your particular country and where you come from. Inclusivity includes many other things. Something that's very, very close to my heart for personal reasons, and what His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum calls, we don't have the word handicapped in our vocabulary in the United Arab Emirates. We tend not to say disability. We say students of determination, and everybody has different abilities. Kids that have come from school that have autism, ADHD, other conditions that are not necessarily visible. We honor and feel and believe that these students add so much to our campus. We have systems in place that integrate them into our curriculum, and my goodness, is AUD far better off for it. The process of thinking, the diversity of thinking, what they bring to the classroom, these students of determination, has been incredible. We have a 96.1% employability rate, and I think that just doesn't happen. This co-creation, this diversity, and this inclusivity is a huge factor among that.
Thank you, Raj.
Okay.
Thank you, Raj. We have just about gone over time, but there is one last question that I would like all of you, if you want to address that question. One of the questions is from Sunita, and she has mentioned, how do we ensure that NEP 2020 doesn't lead to commercialization of education in the country? So commercialization of education is a long debated topic in our country, and as I think Lakshmi was mentioning, this not for profit repatriation. So how do we solve this puzzle is something that if you guys can share your concluding remarks on, and if you think that's the right way in which education in the country should proceed, should we allow universities to be for profit, or what is the model that you suggest? So if we can start with Lakshmi, probably Lakshmi, you can take this up. What do you think? Universities should be allowed to be for profit, and what is the future of education?
I think philosophically, India has struggled with this question a lot, primarily because, you know, we look at education as a not-for-profit venture. But having said that, if you look at world-class institutions around the world, they are all private institutions that have been well endowed, that have pumped money into research, and, you know, have had the fortune of kind of, you know, even spinning off some of these ventures into for-profit initiatives. As India looks to kind of, you know, increase the GER and have more than 70 million learners in the higher education space and so on, I think there is enough space for state-funded institutions and also for-profit institutions to coexist, because there is enough to kind of, you know, go around in the Indian higher education space. Commercialization of education has already happened. It's not like, you know, it hasn't happened at all in India. It's already taken place. We are seeing it in our school education. You know, tell me if there is one politician in India who will send his or her children to state-funded schools. No, they all go to private education, even at the school level. So, you know, we are deluding ourselves when we say that, you know, oh, commercialization of education, it has already happened. The very fact that if you look at the expansion in the Indian higher education space in the last decade or so, that has happened in the private higher education space, where, you know, it is a commercial venture. And students, you know, there are all sorts of private institutions that are operating. There are high quality ones, there are mid-level, and there are, you know, absolutely, you know, there are ones that need to be regulated, of course. But From a government perspective, what probably we need to do is to have a framework which would enable quality institutions to operate. And I don't think that, regulating it by way of saying that, everybody should have the same tuition fees, everybody should have, nobody should charge anything. It doesn't work. At the end of the day, it is an economic activity. That is my view. It might not kind of be agreeable to a lot of people, but I am a pragmatist. And I feel that, there's space for even within private institutions to enable education of disadvantaged groups. Yeah, there are mechanisms for that, to enable that. But that doesn't mean that we start punishing the private higher education space for commercialization, because it has already happened in higher education space.
Ankur, can I say? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about the for-profit, we need to think about three different categories in the US, particularly in the US context. There are three different categories. One is the state universities, public universities that are typically called government universities. Then there are the private universities. Many of these private top universities are private universities, like say, for example, MIT, Stanford. These are the Carnegie Mellon. These are the private universities. But these are not the for-profit universities. And there's a separate class of universities that are called for-profit university. And frankly speaking, in the US context, the for-profit universities have not been that much successful in terms of the quality of the education, in terms of the serving the student body. For the private institutes, they charge, in some of the cases, they charge their sticker price of the tuition is very high in some of the cases. But you'll be very surprised to know that if a student is accepted in Yale or Harvard or Stanford, there is no single student they don't be admitted just because of the financial constraint. If there is an advantage of these private institutes, that they are not for profit. They get the money from the student who can afford, and they put it back into the system, either by adding resources to serve the most student, or by giving the scholarship back to the students who need this. And that's a very beautiful model that has worked really well. And they have huge amount of endowment from very successful students. Say, for example, a student who did not do, who was not economically well, who has got scholarship out of the Harvard, and then set up this business, became a billionaire after 20, 30 years. Then he will give the money back to the university in millions of dollars, and that becomes the endowment. And that is a beautiful model that has worked very well in the US private institute context. Even in the state university system, I'll give you an example. Say, for example, in the USF, we have one of the lowest tuition rate across the whole US system. One of the lowest tuition rate. There's a sticker price. There's a sticker price of the institute of the tuition that is on the page. But there are a lot of scholarships that are given by the institutes from the resources that are generated out of the tuitions, out of the full sticker price tuitions. So on average, many of the students get the accessibility. So if you use the private for-profit or private money to create a system that make the education accessible to wider variety of the students, not just to the rich kids, then it will make more sense in the Indian context.
Thank you, Dr. Dutta. I think some relevant points there. With regards to us, I agree with Lakshmi. We are neither there nor here, and neither we are not. I don't understand not for profit. I'm these days looking for a nursery school admission for my daughter, and I know the kind of cost of nursery admissions is equivalent to a university admission in one of the top tier private institutions. So I really hope that this issue is resolved and we understand and we sort out how do we fund our education system and how the finance is done. So I believe that we have come to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much to everyone. Dr. Rajika had to leave because we had another engagement. Thank you so much to everyone who who joined us in the audience. Thank you so much, my distinguished panels. On behalf of UP Jindal Global University, our sincere gratitude, and we definitely look forward to collaborating with you again in your future. Stay safe, stay well, everyone. Wish you all a very best and a good evening or a morning ahead for our audience. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ankur.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Pleasure, everybody. Thank you, audience, for joining us.